Well, Dorothy Edwards has become very strangely significant to me as a writer. Um, in that in that not muse, but in that kind of intellectual sense of like a connection of craft. I kind of fell for her a little bit, you know. I really felt this kind of strange connection, which was there on a thread really until Chris Durnall asked me to write this play about her. And it's very easy to get all sort of wound up in ideas of serendipity and is there higher powers at work, and you know, the fact that me and Chris Durnall came together in the way that we did at the time we did, with some strange mutual appreciation for Dorothy Edwards' work. But the moment that he asked me to write the play, and I began researching it more and more, researching her more and more, researching for the play, I realised that this was a story, that was a really important story to ideas of Welsh culture, Welsh identity, Welsh literature. Who she was very much who I felt like I was. Not that I'm comparing my stature to hers, or my significance to hers, but in a very personal sense, she believed that she was being ostracised from the world, from life, really. And that was for a few reasons. Firstly, she was a Welsh writer who didn't write in Welsh, so the Welsh language literati didn't want anything to do with it. She was a Welsh writer who didn't really write about the Welsh experience. She wrote mainly about English upper middle classes in country homes, doing nothing. So the English language, Welsh literati didn't really want anything to do with it because she wasn't writing about Wales. And she was always going to struggle in England. She was always going to struggle, even with the embrace of the Bloomsbury lot, because of her Welshness. And even though I think you could argue that they saw her as a little bit of an exotic plaything for a while, I think there was genuine admiration. If you read anything of David Garnett's appreciation for her, I don't think you could doubt the enthusiasm and the authenticity of his appreciation of her as a writer. But I think eventually, in the end, she was always going to be overwhelmed by what we now almost flippantly refer to as imposter syndrome. Even though I don't think, I think it's imposter syndrome, or what that stands for, is something much more damning and obliterating in some ways. She was a wonderfully careful writer. I mean, I often think of her the same, because they were near contemporaries with Catherine Mansfield, but I think of Catherine Mansfield as more of a buccaneer, a swashbuckler of a writer, more of a sort of bull in a china shop type writer, which I love, and it's given her an enormous legacy, Mansfield, one that Dorothy Edwards doesn't have, because I think Edwards' work is so much quieter. It's about things that don't happen, and things that aren't said, and I think she's kind of been a little bit left behind because of that quietness to her work, but not the quietness to her life. I think her biography is fascinating, which is why I wanted to write the play about it. But a really significant writer, and had she lived longer and produced that great book, which she definitely had in her, I think her, and quite possibly Welsh writing in general, would be thought of very differently indeed. It's a great shame. Her two books, Rhapsody, a collection of short stories, and Winter Sonata, her novel, short novel, maybe more than a novella, but as far as word count goes, it is what it is, were books of great promise. I think The Conquered is the closest thing we have to the short story. The Conquered is the closest thing we have to a Dorothy Edwards short story, a closest thing we have to a masterpiece. And I think is proof that had her trajectory continued, she would have created one. Perhaps even a great novel, or several great novels. a great, sad, tragic shame that became very, very potent to me and everybody else who worked on the play. Yeah, a very sad story, but one that we worked hard to make not tragic and morose, but something more beautiful and positive, I think. And I think we managed that. But the play is a play, is fiction, and her life was what it was. It was not a happy one.